So Cardano ADA has moved more than 9% to the upside, and what's interesting about this move is it looks like it's made up of corrective moves rather than impulsive moves. And so there is a possibility that we ended up topping off at around 74.6 cents, and we're now on the move to the downside, where we could see a potential WXY structure form, and ADA can then potentially reach this target here between 53.42 cents to 61.75 cents. And so if I remove this and go down to the 15-minute chart and break down these structures, and again, straight away, I can see that these structures are made up of corrective moves rather than impulsive moves. And so, for example, over here, we have this WXY structure, and then we have this corrective move to the downside, which is also made up of a WXY structure, and then we have this WXY structure to the upside, where we ended up getting rejected at the 200 EMA. And then shortly after, we saw this corrective move to the downside made up of a WXY structure. And then we have a WXY structure to the upside where the Y wave looks to be explosive and impulsive, meaning that it's made up of 5 waves. And then we have this corrective move to the downside, which is also made up of a WXY structure. And we have a WXY structure to the upside where we ended up reaching around 72.5 cents. So if I draw that in, just so it's more clearer, we have a WXY structure where we ended up getting rejected at the 50 EMA. And then we had this corrective move to the downside made up of a WXY structure, which you'll be able to see if I was to go down to the minute chart. And then we have this WXY structure where we ended up getting rejected at the 200 DMA. And then we had this corrective move made up of a WXY structure. And then we had this WXY structure to the upside where the Y wave was explosive. And then we had this corrective move. And then last but not least, we had this WXY structure where within this W wave, we have another WXY structure, and within the Y wave, we have a WXY structure where the Y wave was explosive. And that then forms a bigger WXY structure, like so. And then we had this corrective move to the downside, and then we had another bigger WXY structure, like so, which then formed a even bigger WXY structure, like so. And so if I remove the internal structures, just so the chart's more clearer, and this one here, so here we have our WXY structure to the upside. And so what we can do now is check to see if the Y wave met the typical requirements, which is a 1 to 1.236 retracement of the W wave. So if I bring that to you over here, and you can see that we ended up extending beyond the 1.236 retracement level. However, we failed to reach the 1.618 retracement level, which again tells me that this move to the upside was not impulsive, but instead it was corrective. And then within this Y wave, we had a WXY structure. And so again, what we can do is check to see if that Y wave met the typical requirements. And yeah, as you can see, we ended up reaching this region here. And we essentially got rejected at the 1.236 retracement level. And so it looks like that move to the upside is complete, and then we are now on the move to the downside. And so if I go back to the hourly chart, it's possible that we have a WXY structure forming, like so. And so what we can do is target out our Y wave. Which is typically a 1 to 1.236 retracement of the W wave. And so if I bring that down to the right place, and you can see that ADA has the potential to reach anywhere between 62.9 cents to 64.64 cents. And this target actually falls short of our bigger target. And so it's possible that the X wave doesn't extend beyond the typical requirements. However, if it extends at a minimum of 23.6% of our W wave, then the structure still remains valid. Or the other alternative could be that we have a bigger WXY structure forming, where essentially what you'd have is a W wave, X wave, and Y wave. And then this WXY structure that we're currently tracking could then form our W wave, and then we have a move to the upside, and then a final move to the downside where ADA can then potentially reach this region here. And so short term, it is looking like we are slightly bearish, and you can see that on Smart Money Concept, it's indicating that we have a strong high, and you can see that we ended up getting rejected at our local top at 72.9 cents, and then we saw this move to the downside. Now, the good thing is we ended up actually finding support at the 50 EMA, and so for us to continue to remain bullish, then we need ADA to continue to hold this position and continue to see a move to the upside. Now, if I was to go on the 4-hour chart, you can see that on the stochastic RSI, it's indicating that we are overbought, and same can be said on the daily chart where we are overbought, given that we are above 50. And so again, we are slightly bearish as things stand at the moment. And of course, previously I have been talking about a potential move to the upside where ADA can reach anywhere between 76.69 cents to 80 cents within this 5-wave move to the upside. And so again, for us to remain bullish, then we need ADA to continue to hold this position and then continue to see a move to the upside. And the ideal scenario would be for ADA to retest the local high and continue to push through to the upside. And so yeah, that's just my quick update on Cardano ADA. Hopefully you found this useful, and if you did, then feel free to hit that like button, and if you're new, feel free to subscribe. Take it easy, people. Peace.